The 2024 Ford Mustang EcoBoost gets some really big changes here for this new generation, which I'll talk about in a second. But in this video, I'm going to cover the exterior, the interior, go for a drive and talk all about how it drives, as well as discussing the safety technology, the fuel economy, and also the pricing and how it compares to the very few competitors these days. But anyway, as far as the EcoBoost Mustang, well, arguably it gets more changes than the GT, with this getting a mostly new engine versus the mostly carryover one you get in the GT. And in addition to that, you of course have the new styling. Now, Ford likes to call this an all-new 7th generation Mustang. It is not all new, and calling it a new generation is even generous in my opinion. So, as you might be able to tell, it's heavily based on the prior generation, the S650 Mustangs, and there's really no dimensional changes. It's a tiny bit taller to give you a little bit more headroom inside, but all the hard points are the same. You know, you can see it's the same side mirrors, same window line, you know, all that stuff is mostly unchanged. But it is a nice freshening up of the styling for sure. You have some new headlights up front there that look really sharp. They do the cool welcome lighting whenever you walk up to them as well. And you have a larger grille in the front there. And I think it actually looks a little bit better on the EcoBoost here because it makes the grille a little smaller versus the larger grille you kind of get on the GTs these days. But a really nice look, I think, up front here. Coming down to the sides, this one also has the high performance package on it, which gives you these 19-inch wheels that are a little wider with 255 wide tires all around, and they're hiding these bigger Brembo brakes as well. And we'll talk all about all the performance pack benefits and what you get in that package whenever we hit the road. You have some new door handles, and you know, the main thing is going to be that rear quarter panel, which is a little bit longer than before, and it leads into those new dramatic taillights that have what I call like angular concavity to them, where it's really cut in deeply. It's honestly the largest cut like that I think I've ever seen in automotive styling in a production car. It's really impressive, very much makes a statement, and the whole back end really seems a lot lower than the previous generation as a result. And you have the exhaust tips that are even sticking out there, the quad exhaust here on this one, which has the active performance exhaust. And so yeah, overall, I think that the new 2024 Mustang styling is certainly a nice improvement, gives it a sharper, more modern look, and I think they did a great job here on this reskinning. The interior of the 2024 Mustang is a mix of new and old once again. Now, the big new thing here are these screens and, you know, the new dashboard design here. And so how you feel about this interior will likely come down to how you feel about screens replacing physical controls and how you feel about heritage being thrown out, because that's what the S650 does here. You don't have the traditional double brow hood you used to have on the dashboard here. That is just a distant memory now, and it's replaced with just these giant screens and very few physical controls. You have a little row of little buttons down here, but all the beautiful metal switchgear from the prior generation is all gone. Before we get to the screens here, sitting down in these seats, that's another thing that is carryover. These are the same Recaro seats as the S650. If you liked them in that vehicle or didn't like them, your opinion should stay basically the same here in this. They have a perforation, which is certainly a nice touch, and, you know, again, me being a fairly small guy, they hug me in really nicely. You're definitely going to want to sit in these seats though and see if they fit you and your body type, because they are definitely on the snug side and definitely not going to work for everybody. And even though I fit, these side bolsters are so wide that I'm like, whenever I'm driving, it's a little awkward because like I have to make a choice if my elbow's going to be tucked in super tight or like way out wide here when I drive, because there's no comfortable happy medium with these seats for me. So again, really going to come down to, you know, you testing them out for yourself. The one other thing that I don't love about these Recaro seats is that they charge you $1,650 for the privilege of losing your heated and cooled seats, which you get here in these premium versions of the Mustang. And you know, so these seats are manual controls, no power, no memory, none of that stuff, and you get all those things I just mentioned in the base standard seats in a premium. And so it's just unfortunate that they haven't figured out a way in the past 10 years to add in heating and cooling and power to these Recaro seats, or do a new Recaro seat potentially for a new generation. But I digress. Anyway, you know, they're comfortable once you're in them if you fit. But anyway, moving on to the steering wheel here. That is all new and has a flat bottom for the first time here. Great 9-3 grip, bigger 10-2 notches than before, and you know, just some plastic buttons here on the front, and it's a nice steering wheel. I do like the textured carbon fiber plastic here that you have all throughout this interior. It's textured, and you know, it's a little nicer than your average plastic. Still would like to see something a little higher quality, but for this type of vehicle, I think it fits. The only other thing I will say though is that you have plastic paddle shifters. And, you know, how expensive Mustangs have been getting these days, it would have been nice to see something that's actually, you know, metal plated, feels a little nicer than these do. Moving on though to the screens here, you have a 12.3-inch digital gauge cluster here, and you have a 13.2-inch touchscreen. Now, in the premium, they're connected with a piece of black plastic to make it seem like it's one big unit. They're still two separate screens. The base model Mustang still has the same screens, just without that little gap filled in the middle. It's the same thing. So the base Mustang is actually a stronger value than ever here with all the basic safety you get as well as the technology you get here. It's actually a really strong value for that base one, but it just means there's less incentive to upgrade to the premium here this year. But anyway, as far as the gauge cluster goes, it's a really cool screen. So you have a decent amount of customization there. I wish that it was set up with the menus the same way as the last generation Mustang though, which is a little more logical and easy to follow. But the one really cool thing about these gauges that I do love is the fact you have customizable gauge styles. And you had that a little bit with the last generation, but you have a little bit more here and the ability to really open it up to more creative things. So you see I'm running the Fox body gauges here, which is one of the options. They also just announced a retro gauge pack based on the 67 and 68 Mustangs that you can download as an over-the-air thing and get here in these as well. But this one unfortunately didn't have that, so I wasn't able to try that. But you know, a really cool gauge cluster. I love also that at night, whenever you have your headlights on, they light up green just like they did back then. And I don't love Fox bodies myself personally, but just that, you know, old-fashioned throwback to nostalgia still, you know, something that excites even me. So yeah, really cool set of gauges in my opinion. And this touchscreen is a little bit of a mixed bag. So it has wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto. That's great. It connected pretty quickly most of the time, although there was one time where it was saying it was playing my music through CarPlay, but it wasn't playing anything at all. And it wouldn't work until I key cycled the vehicle, and then it would work again. But you know, outside of that, it's a little slow with the responses too. As you can see, as I'm just trying to demonstrate the screen's functions, you can see it's doing these loading things, and it's hit or miss. Some things are super fast, other things are, you know, pretty slow for 2024 infotainment standards. But it is kind of nice. You have, you know, the My Mustang page, which can allow you to customize all kinds of stuff. You have some auxiliary gauges you can display here. But that is another nitpick, is in the last generation you could have the boost gauge right in the middle of the gauge cluster here. Now you got to look over to the side here in these gauges in order to get that boost gauge readout, which is, you know, nice to have here for the EcoBoost to see, you know, what your turbo is doing. But otherwise, you know, doing all the radio stations, things like that are all easy to do. And overall, you know, it's a nice screen. If it got a little bit of a speed boost or got some kinks worked out of it, I think it would actually be pretty solid. There's a couple of menus, things are a little bit buried. I still don't love the fact that the climate controls are all on the screen, but, you know, at least they're always constant on the bottom there, so they don't go away, and pretty easy to use. So not a big deal there, but, you know, I know a lot of people do really love the physical controls, as do I. And again, you can see that is clearly missing. The only other things you'll see here in this interior are that you have this wireless charging pad now, which this one, I don't know why, but this one looks really rough. I'm not sure what the deal is with that. I don't know if they just don't age very well. This car has almost 10,000 miles on it, but you also see your power outlets in there. And then otherwise, you know, the other unique thing here for the 2024 is you have this electronic e-brake. It's part of the performance package. Otherwise, on regular EcoBoost Mustangs, you'll just have a little button like any other commuter car for your e-brake. They got rid of the e-brake here with the 2024s. This is an electronic e-brake. It allows you to do their drift turn thing that they allow you to do now, which I'm not going to try out here on the public roads, but you know, it has that as well. And I have to say, you know, I commend them trying to imitate an e-brake with this, but it just feels weird as someone who's lived with 10 years of S650 Mustangs, basically, you know, pushing down to release it, you know, just a little press, and then I'm going to like yank up like I always do on an e-brake, and instead it's just like a little travel, and it just feels a little artificial. Maybe that's something I would learn to be okay with, but my week with this vehicle, it just kind of, every time I used it, it was like, this actually annoys me more than just an automatic e-brake. I think probably would. But, you know, I guess it's nice if you do plan to actually use that for hooning or whatever. The other parts of this interior, though, are all carryover from the last generation. The whole door panel basically is the same, aside from, again, having that new carbon fiber trim that also incorporates new speaker grills. But otherwise, I mean, all the window switches, all the door handles, all the metal here, that's all copy and paste. There's a slight new material, I'd say, here for the top part of the doors, and everything is nice and soft touch, so it's very premium feeling, so that's good. It just, you know, again, you can't call this a new generation and then phone it in with identical doors from the last generation, basically. But otherwise, you know, you have your center armrest, same as the S550s here. You open it up and there's a nice little cubby in there with a power outlet. You also will have this stitching, the cross stitching here is kind of nice, and it looks attractive, and it is padded on the dashboard and stuff, but unfortunately down by your knees here, it's hard, and that's where you're going to be resting your knee, and I wish that was padded. That's actually padded a little bit more in the S550. You do have some padding lower here on the center tunnel, but your leg's never going to come in contact with that. So the part that actually counts, they didn't put enough padding on, in my opinion. But anyway, that's the end of my complaints. I also really like that you do have a frameless rearview mirror here in this, and another key change is whenever they gave you a little bit more headroom here, they added in this sunglasses holder, which replaces the little cool pocket you used to have on the left-hand side. I kind of miss that little pocket. Backseat is also going to be the same as any other, you know, prior gen Mustang, since again the dimensions are all pretty much the same. I'm 5'9". I can fit back there. It depends on how tall your passengers in the front are and how willing they are to be a little uncomfortable to give you some extra comfort. You know, it's usable in a pinch, but I wouldn't use it on a regular basis for anyone that's an adult at least. And trunk is also the same as last generation Mustang. It's a nice wide space, pretty long, a little bit of, you know, space under the floor there to maybe stash some towels or something like that, but you know, not a lot of space under there. But you know, should be totally fine. Again, I lived with it for 10 years as a daily driver, and you know, no problems with that trunk, and the seats do fold flat if you want a little more versatility as well. But let's start up and go for a drive. The Mustang here has the same key as the last generation as well. Another thing they just brought over from the old one, but it's a fine key. I like that it has the Mustang badge on it and the buttons on the back there. And of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. And it's a cool little sound it plays whenever you turn it on. All right, so setting off here in the 2024 Ford Mustang EcoBoost. So the first thing you notice about this vehicle, I think the first thing that always stands out to me is just the unique driving position here in the Mustang, where you still have that long hood you look out over, and pretty good visibility otherwise though. You know, A-pillars aren't too thick, pretty good view out of the back for a coupe, and yeah, just you know, a really cool vibe. You're looking over that hood every time you drive this vehicle. Another thing that you notice right off the bat is this one has the active performance exhaust, which is like $1,225 added on to any of these EcoBoost Mustangs, but it also requires an extra package, which is another like $2,000 plus to, you know, give you that higher you know, standing for whatever reason that they require for that active exhaust. But it has a good burble to it, but it doesn't always sound great because of this transmission, which I'll get to in a minute. But brakes have a nice and consistent feel to them. No complaints there, and I think actually they're a little easier to modulate smoothly than the prior generation Brembos, which really clamped down a little harder and were a little trickier to be smooth with. I haven't had as much trouble with these this week. Throttle response is also pretty good whenever the transmission feels like it. So whenever the transmission is working with what you want it to do, throttle response is great. And this brings me to my biggest flaw, the one big flaw of this vehicle right off the bat, is the transmission. The transmission is what ruins this experience. Now, if you are just cruising around, not trying to do anything sporty, even then it's gonna get on your nerves, I think, every once in a while. And I don't know, this vehicle again has 10,000 miles on it basically, and it's had a new driver every single week since it's a press fleet vehicle. So maybe this transmission, since it does do some learning, maybe it just doesn't know what to think anymore and it's just behaving poorly for that reason. I don't know, but this is an exact demonstration. I am almost half throttle and it is still lugging the engine at 1500 RPMs, and that creates a drone from this exhaust. It's a real bassy drone. It sounds like you got like a subwoofer going at a low volume, just trying to climb a hill in this thing because it won't downshift. It's so annoying. But let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it accelerates. Here we go, I'm in sport mode and let's try it out. Okay, took it a second, but then this thing flies. It is so punchy. It's a pretty warm sunny day, so this engine might be a little heat soaked right now, but in the evening this thing was so strong feeling, and I can imagine in boost weather it's even more of a monster. But sounds good though, doesn't it? So it's a 2.3 liter inline 4-cylinder engine still, just like the last generation, but it's been heavily revised. And it also seems to be making a little bit of noise. I'm not sure what that's about. I'm hearing a little extra like rattly kind of sound in it. But anyway, it's a strong motor. It does 315 horsepower, 5 more than before. 350 pound-feet of torque, still same as before there. But the big changes to the motor are, even though it shares probably a common basis, it now has port in addition to direct injection, which will give you that better long-term reliability and cleaning off those valves and all that. And it's really great that they've added that in here. And it also, this motor now has a new turbo on it. It's a smaller twin-scroll turbo that really does a good job of giving you a ton of punch anywhere in the rev range. Doesn't feel like it really runs out of steam quite as much in the upper RPMs like it used to as well. But so, you know, a really great thing, also has an electronic wastegate now on this motor. But I'm going to do manual shifting, so it does let me stay in first gear, but it's fairly quick on the upshift whenever you are like full throttle. But whenever you're just trying to have fun and you're not trying to floor it everywhere you go, it is a little slow. So like, for example, I'm going to just off throttle, downshift. It's not bad. I mean, but sometimes I'm waiting a while for an upshift. I think sport mode probably helps a little bit with it knowing that I want quicker shifts, but in normal mode, manual shifting is like almost useless. But it's also a little rough every once in a while, this transmission. But anyway, kind of have some corners here I always take. Let's see how it handles. This one also has the magnetic ride control, which is an extra cost thing in addition to the performance package. But man, this thing is so good with the handling. So with the new 7th generation Mustang, they did give you a little bit of extra rigidity in the chassis, as well as giving you quicker steering. Those are the two big changes here for this platform now. This quicker steering is certainly amazing. Quicker steering is always something I love in other vehicles, and the grip is also really good here in this vehicle. It is so well done because you have these wider tires, 255 wide tires all around there, Pirelli P0 summer tires. Not my favorite summer tire. It definitely is loose in the back, but it's kind of adding a little bit of extra fun in my opinion whenever it is kicking the back end out. Probably not the most confidence-inspiring tires. I think if you want to do some serious corner carving, you'd be better off throwing out these tires and getting something better, because I don't like the Pirellis generally. But you know, it does an okay job here in this, and yeah, just lots and lots of flatness to it, just a lot of poise, and just it really feels good. I mean, the only thing I will say is that it feels big. You know, it does feel, you know, since again you're looking over that big hood, it feels wide. You know, it's just something you have to get used to. If you're not used to Mustangs, it's going to be an adjustment period. You're really going to feel like you're piloting this giant ship of a vehicle, really. But once you get used to it, again, I've been driving S650 Mustangs for about 10 years now. You know, you get used to it, and it's not a big deal. But you know, it is a little bit more mass to throw around too. These are around 3,900 pounds or so now for the EcoBoost. They used to be, you know, for the older generation, you know, around 35, 36, I believe. So it's gained a little bit of weight here. But man, it is so strong, and I really do love this exhaust. Whenever it's not droning at, you know, 1,100 RPMs, it does sound actually really good. And I think that this engine, with these changes they've made to it, I think it has given it a different tone. I think it's a deeper tone than the last EcoBoost. The last EcoBoost was a little buzzier, a little higher pitched, and I hope it comes through on camera here, but I can certainly tell from behind the driver's seat here. It is a deeper, more Mustang-sounding four-cylinder, in my opinion, and it sounds really good. I think it's actually a really nice improvement. You know, I never really minded the EcoBoost exhaust. I know a lot of people like giving them crap for it, you know, for the last generation, but I never really minded it. But this is certainly a nice improvement. And let's do another acceleration in sport mode. There we go. Yeah, this thing, oh, it feels so good. And also the performance numbers are really impressive. Car and Driver got a 4.5 second 0 to 60 time, 13.2 second quarter mile, but 4.5 seconds 0 to 60. Let that sink in for an EcoBoost Mustang. My 2019 Mustang Bullet with 480 horsepower from a V8, that did 4.4 seconds. Now the manual certainly slowed that car down compared to the auto here. You know, but this auto, whenever it does know what it's doing, it is really an impressive performance transmission, just because it can rip off those shifts with 10 speeds. I mean, it's just vicious, and so the numbers don't lie. This will keep up basically with, you know, S650 GT's no problem all day long. So this motor, I feel like it's got to be underrated. It certainly feels like more than 310 horsepower, especially whenever, you know, it's not a super hot day, but even on a day like today, it still feels really strong. And also, one of the nice things here with the performance package, the high performance package, is that you do get a 355 limited slip differential in the back, which is you know, going to give you a little bit of a shorter gear ratio there than I believe the 315s you usually get in EcoBoost, and help this to pull a little harder as well, and does a great job of putting the power down too. And I like that it is keeping the RPMs nice and high here in sport mode. It knows that I'm, you know, trying to have some fun, and it's also impressive that it's not leaning on the low end torque and wanting to upshift, which is a nice surprise, because the rest of this week in normal mode, this thing just wanted to upshift all the time. And I think Car and Driver actually in their review said that this does a really good CVT impression. I think that's honestly too generous, because I think CVTs are more responsive than this transmission usually is in normal mode. And I honestly, you know, this is really a trend that I've been seeing among a lot of performance vehicles. The Volkswagen Golf R, its DSG is also set up to be really hypermiling and giving you early upshifts. I guess everyone's just trying to squeeze out every last, you know, fuel economy number they can for the ratings, but it just means that unless these vehicles are in their sport mode, they really don't want to wake up. But when they do wake up, then they really shine, and it's a very, very impressive experience. But we got some more tight corners here, and as I slow down, the brakes are also nicely improved here for the performance pack version. So you have 6-piston Brembos in the front, 4 pistons in the rear, and they're larger rotors, of course, as well, in addition to the bigger calipers there. But you know, plenty of braking capability with these brakes. You also get a new suspension tune in addition to the strut tower bar. You know, a nice package. Now, it's not cheap. It's, you know, about $3,500, but it is cheaper than it used to be, and that's because, again, MagneRide is a separate option that's $1,750. So even in sport mode here, now that it knows that I have chilled out, it is going straight down to 1,500 RPMs, and it's just chilling. And so I'm going to drive around the rest of the time in normal mode here. Maybe none of you ever will, but I think a lot of people do just, you know, want to drive in normal mode all the time and not have everything be stiff, especially with this MagneRide suspension. Yeah, there's a custom mode as well, in addition to a track mode, a drag strip mode, a slippery and wet mode. You know, so you can custom tailor a custom mode if you want to have, you know, the quicker response, but that's also going to kill your fuel economy if you're always sitting at higher RPMs. So I just, you know, wish the normal mode was better calibrated, but we'll try it out here a little more, and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so now it's like, it really loves lugging this engine. I kind of wonder, you know, if it's good for the life of the motor to be always lugging everywhere you go. Okay, that time it gave me a little bit of a downshift. The problem here is there's just too many gears as well. When you have 10 speeds, you know, a lot of other transmissions just need to go down like 1 gear to, you know, get the car to spring back to life, whereas with this, you know, it's got to go down 2 or 3 gears to, you know, get you back into any kind of lively performance, and it's just not quick enough sometimes jumping down to those gears, again, just because of the way that it's programmed here. But the other things, you know, so on this road now, a little bit of higher speeds, but, you know, outside of the drone and the rattle from the exhaust, you know, it's a totally fine experience, nice and smooth. The Mustangs have always been such great grand tours. So they're really nice for just cruising along, you know, doing your daily commuting, going on road trips, things like that are wonderful in these vehicles. Nice and comfortable. The magnetic dampers also are really great because you can have it stiffer or softer depending on your mood and what you're doing. But there's not huge variations between the modes, so you know, it's nice to have, but if you are on a tighter budget, I think you can safely skip the MagneRide dampers, because again, you can still get, you know, the sportier suspension tune, which hopefully won't be much harsher than it is right here in this. One thing I don't really love about this new generation Mustang, though, is it has auto stop start now. That is something you can also turn off with a custom mode, but otherwise you got to remember every time you get in this vehicle to hit the button to turn that off, so that it doesn't do the auto stop start, which I just feel like is kind of weird to Mustang, especially one with a loud exhaust. To have that exhaust come back to life loudly every time you go from a red light just doesn't seem like it's a great look. So you know, one thing I just don't love again about these as well. And another thing too is that whenever you're following behind traffic, if you don't have a giant following distance, it's going to have this little orange light illuminating on the dash, giving you a warning that you might be following too closely. You know, it's just part of this thing having this Ford Copilot 360 system now, which, you know, is standard. It gives you a lot of great safety tech as standard. You have adaptive cruise control standard, which is really great on road trips. You have you know, all the other stuff. Lane keeping assist is standard. Blind spot monitoring is standard. Everything you're wanting, basically, it's all there. And so it's nice there's no extra cost option to upgrade to that stuff if you are someone who likes that. But if you're someone who doesn't like that stuff, just means that you're saddled with a bunch of tech and a bunch of little nannies that you probably don't want. I guess it's just one of the things you're gonna have to live with, again, if you want the newest generation of Mustang here. But out on the highway here, it's a great cruiser, and I did test the adaptive cruise control system a little bit more last night. I'll turn it back on again here though, just to test it out once more. But it's nice that you can turn the lane keeping assist on nice and easy right here on the steering wheel, so you don't have to go into a menu or find another button in order to do it. It's right there. You can turn it off whenever you don't want it anymore. And so that is certainly a nice thing to have. But we're slowing down for some traffic here, and it's been pretty smooth with the adaptive cruise system, but it wasn't perfect. And two little complaints. First off, when I was doing the lane keep assist last night, actually, I was driving past an exit, and it wanted to follow down into the exit, and then like kick back over, and then was like, keep your hands on the wheel. And I'm like, I was keeping my hands on the wheel. You're the one that screwed up, because I kind of just let it do it for a little bit there. But then it immediately like blamed me for letting it go into the lane. And so it's kind of funny. It also kept saying keep your hands on the wheel when I had my hands on the wheel and I was applying torque to it. So it's not a very smart system as far as figuring out when you're having your hands on the wheel, and you certainly can't get away with not having them on because it's very, very adamant that it's always reminding you your hands need to be on the wheel. But most other systems, when your hands are on the wheel, they can recognize it. This one can't seem to tell whether or not your hands are on the wheel half the time. So maybe it's just this vehicle, maybe it's just first year little bugs. I hope maybe that's something they refine down the road, but wasn't super impressed with that either. It's fine to have it. Again, you can easily turn it off. I'm sure most of you that are buying Mustangs actually like to do your own driving and don't want the thing to give you any assistance. If you are someone who wants that stuff, just know it's not perfect yet. But the last couple of things to mention are the fuel economy and then the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as fuel economy goes, these are rated at 21 mpg in the city, 29 on the highway, and 24 combined with a performance package here. And that fuel economy is not great for a 4-cylinder, but there's other vehicles like the main competitor to this vehicle now, which gets the same fuel economy with way less power. So not bad. I think that's one of the perks of this 10-speed here, but it's not like you're getting amazing fuel economy. And the funny thing is, even with this thing trying to hypermile me all week here with driving around, I'm still only getting 18.9 mpg in my driving. I typically do 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating in my driving with any of the vehicles that I'm testing. So this kind of checks out with that. I'm getting 19 here, 21 is what the city is. So not out of the ordinary, but it's just, the whole point of the EcoBoost is to get better fuel economy, and I'm still only getting 19. What would I be getting? Maybe 17 in a GT or something? It's not a big difference. I think, you might see a little bit of a better improvement out on the highway maybe, and maybe in real world driving, depending on your driving, you'll get better mileage, and maybe your mileage will vary and be worthwhile over the V8. But it'd be nice to see the EcoBoost be a little more eco, but it really isn't still. It still is just essentially, a different way of giving you power at a lower price point. And again, it's basically V8 power levels, at least as far as the acceleration times goes. So it's very, very impressive, and so you have V8-like fuel economy to go along with the V8-like performance. But the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. And pricing is another thing that has gone up a good bit, but mostly for the GTs. The EcoBoost, they've tried to keep it intact a little bit. I mean, it's still expensive. These start around $33,000, just over $33,000 for a base EcoBoost, and then if you want the performance package, which again is about $3,500, that bumps you up to a little over $36,500 for a bare bones one. But like I said, I think the base car is a better value than ever, because again, you have the big screens as standard, you get all the safety stuff as standard. All those things, I think, make it a little easier to live with the base one than in the past when you had a tiny little calculator size screen in the S650s on the base ones and stuff. This is a lot better. Again, it still is an increase over the last generation. A lot of that's just inflation, and a lot of that's also Ford having no real big competitors to compete with anymore. And that's the last thing to mention is, the competition, or lack thereof. Camaro has dropped out. Challenger has dropped out. We have a new Charger coming, but the slowest version of that has 420 horsepower for the inline 6 version that's coming here, late in 2024, early 2025. And we don't know the pricing for that. I'm assuming it's going to be more than this because it's so much more horsepower, at least on paper, than this is. So we will have to see about a new Charger, if it is an actual competitor or if that's more so a V8 competitor at this point, for the Mustang GT. But regardless, that's really the only pony car anymore. And outside of that, you know, the only real competitor I would say is the Toyota GR86, which is a very different car and ethos. It's way less horsepower. It's a smaller vehicle. It's more pure with the way that it does the handling. I'd say handling is actually better than this in a lot of ways, at least as far as, you know, just the agility, the purity of the handling is just so much better. You know, lower center of gravity, all that in the GR86. So if you love handling, you know, that's going to be one worth considering. And it is also a faster vehicle. It got some shorter gearing here and really is an amazing experience. I think it's a lot more exciting than the last generation. Worth a revisit if you know, rode off the last generation, haven't checked out the new generation. Check it out. You might be pleasantly surprised with just how punchy it is. A lot more torque than before. But, you know, even those, though, are about $32,000 for the performance pack version to start. And if you want a premium one, you know, those can get up to, you know, $35,000 or so as well. And so this is a lot more power for the same money. Again, if you can, you know, stick to not doing any options and you're okay with all the basic stuff, you know, this is really a strong value compared to that. And I mean, if you're interested in straight line performance, this is just going to, even a base bare bones EcoBoost is going to just leave a GR86 for dead as far as straight line performance, and also should be a pretty good handler, although again GR86 is going to be I think the more fun handler on a back road. But that's really it. So there's no other competitors to talk about sadly anymore. I wish there was more, but you know, the last and I think strongest competitor for this vehicle is just other Mustangs, old Mustangs, V8 Mustangs. This one has tested, I forgot to even mention, is almost $50,000. It's $49,310 like or something, which is just like basically $2,000 less than my 2019 Bullet was. And again, there's inflation in play there and other things, but still, just the fact that it's almost $50,000 for this one as it sits. And you can also get a base GT Mustang with its performance package, even for this new generation version, for about this same money, about $49,000. So I don't think it makes sense to load up an EcoBoost with options like this. This one, I'm sure, you know, Ford just wanted to show off everything that it has, but just, you know, it didn't make sense to spec one up this high, because you got to be crazy to spend $50,000 on an EcoBoost. I'm sorry, but just it's a lot of car. It's fun, but once you get to $50,000, you're better off with the V8 sound, the extra horsepower, the better resale value of the GTs, all that stuff. So, you know, for all those reasons, it's just going to come down to watch your options on these, or if you're not obsessed with the 2024s and you're comfortable with just having another kind of Mustang, get a used one. You can get a nice used EcoBoost with all the same handling hardware with a manual with the last generation EcoBoost, and you can get those for way less. Obviously, it's not fair to compare used versus new, but I just have to say that in the lack of competition, this car's prior generation, which is still, again, so similar to this new generation in so many ways, and in some ways better, again, less nagging with the security systems and all that stuff. You know, I just feel like if it were my money and I really wanted a Mustang, I just get an S550, take your pick, GT, EcoBoost, whatever. Just in any way, I think that S650 is really hard to justify at its higher prices. Again, if you're going to go for a bare bones one of these, okay, I can see it making sense maybe. But once you load up these options and these things balloon to these high prices, just makes zero sense to me. You know, if it had a manual, I think this would be amazing. As it is now, you know, again, your mileage is going to vary as far as the transmission. If the transmission doesn't actively annoy you, you know, by all means, you know, if you're okay with the pricing, go for it. Because it is a lot of fun. But, you know, it's just, whenever it doesn't do what you want it to do, and it's rough and it's, you know, just unresponsive, it really can annoy you and just make you wish for a manual, or at least a better shifting manual experience for the automatic. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on the 2024 Mustang EcoBoost. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks to Ford for providing me here with this EcoBoost Mustang to review for you guys today. And yeah, thank you all very much for watching. I'll see you on the next one. Take care.